12 plus years ago, I made a prediction that private equity would come into the residential home services space in the same way they'd come into the commercial space 2 decades earlier. This has happened. I now have a different prediction. I see a different future. And this future is enabled by AI. And it's enabled by all the software that is coming and all the technology that is coming because of AI. It doesn't all exist now, but I'm guessing at where it's going, and it's giving me a new vision of where business models might progress. So in my prediction, where private equity would come into the market and residential companies would get bigger and more profitable, that happened, but it didn't happen for everyone. It happened for a select group of aggressive owners who invested money, were aggressive with technology, and were aggressive in building their businesses. This next shift, I see it as exactly the same thing. Not everyone's going to benefit. A small number of companies are going to benefit if they choose to use this business model. The business model I'm envisioning, that I'm still working out, and I've been thinking about it for about a year now, trying to figure out how do I invest in it, what's the future look like, when will it be possible based on coming technology, is this concept that I think of as micro brands and invisible owners. That's the language I've put to it for myself. So let me describe what I mean by that. Micro brands is this concept that you don't own a company that does lawn care and pest control and fertilization weed control and tree care and pool service. Rather, you own a company that just does lawn mowing, just does pest control, just does fertilization weed control. We already see this happen. This isn't a new idea. But I believe the technology that's coming will make it possible to be more of a mass market concept. In other words, you will have one company, one operating system behind the scenes that has multiple micro brands. So I have a brand for lawn care. I have a brand for pest. I have a brand for fertilization weed control. And those brands target very specific areas, providing one service. So I might have a brand that only provides lawn mowing in these 5 cities to a very specific kind of client, and a completely different lawn mowing brand that targets potentially the same services, the same city, but going after a different kind of client, or maybe a different brand that's targeting a completely different area. The idea is that you will have multiple brands, all with one back end, owned by one company. And that's the invisible owner part. There will be somebody like me, who is not the face of the company, who is not known, that owns all these different brands. Or it could be you. But someone will own the back end business that owns all the front end brands. And here's the crazy part. I think that model will involve 5 people. 5 people employed on the back end. Maybe a few more, but it will be incredibly small. So imagine this. How crazy does this sound? You own one brand, you have 5 people, you make $3 million a year. Or maybe you have 6 brands generating $20 million a year at a 25% plus net margin. I know it sounds crazy, but let me explain why I think this might be possible and why I'm trying to figure it out. The traditional business model is one of a lot of employees, a lot of complexity, but that creates competitive advantage. The new model is one of a tiny number of employees with maximum leverage, and it leads to focus and simplicity, and that's a competitive advantage. Historically, this model hasn't been possible because we haven't had the technology. It's very hard to manage all the different systems for all the different brands. It's very expensive and time-consuming to spin up all the websites, all the SEO, all the ads, and all the marketing that goes with that brand. It requires a lot of people. It's very complex to manage all the communication. It's very complex to hire all the employees and manage all of the employees. But I believe what's coming is going to change that, and it's going to enable this concept of micro brands. It's going to enable this model of a small number of employees with max leverage. And so it's going to change the way the most aggressive business owners run their business models. I want to use the ghost kitchen model as an example. If you're not familiar with the ghost kitchen, here's the gist of how it works. A restaurant spins up a kitchen in a non-retail environment Just to give you a visual, let's call it a warehouse environment. So in other words, they're not in premium, prime retail space. They're off the beaten path. This facility is one of high automation. And what they do is out of that one kitchen, they might make food under a Mexican brand, an Italian brand, a Chinese food brand, etc. And they will sell food from that one kitchen to all these different brands. And they will have a completely different distribution model. You will not come into the restaurant, sit down. They will distribute through groups like Uber Eats or other distribution models that get the food directly to the buyer. In that model, there's one back end and a lot of front end brands. In that model, they can spin up and spin down brands quickly. So if the Mexican food concept to a very specific market doesn't work, they can kill it and they can spin up a new brand, serving the same market or a different market. That's the gist of the concept that I'm talking about. Now pair this with a contractor model where you don't even employ the individuals doing the work. So imagine a gig economy type model. You understand the contractor model. Pair those two together and some other concepts, and you have the gist of what I'm describing. Here's the problem. I despise the contractor model. I dislike it for a whole bunch of reasons. I equate it to a lower level of quality, and I equate it to difficulty controlling the level of quality. Now, I suspect that software will be able to improve upon this. I think there's a variety of things that you can do that will help solve for this problem. The other thing that I think about is Uber for lawn care, Uber for cleaning, Uber for whatever in the services has generally been a giant fail. So I see the idea of using contractors in this business model is difficult. It's a difficult problem to solve for. But here's the thing. I believe from a technology standpoint that there's a solution. The other reason I have a bit of a problem with the contractor model is that most companies are essentially employing full-time contractors only working for them, and this is an IRS risk. But again, my point here is that this is the crux of the business model that changes the entire game. I believe the future in an AI world is more of a gig economy, not less. I don't believe the government is going to be able to eliminate contractors. I don't think they're going to try to eliminate contractors. I believe this is where we're going. And one of the reasons I believe this to be the case is in an AI world, I think there's going to be a lot of job disruption, and the gig economy is going to play an important role in keeping a lot of people working. The other thing that I dislike about this model is I love the model of one company that solves all your problems. I believe it's what the customer wants. They want one company that can take care of everything. They want that when that one company does a phenomenal job. So emotionally, that's what they want. Practically, what they seem to do is buy from a pest control company or a lawn care company. In other words, they tend to make their buying decision based on who they perceive to have the expertise in that area. Now, you can overcome this, like we do at CityTurf, by selling additional services to your existing clients, and you can do that because they like and trust you, but it takes time to earn that reputation and that trust. Spinning up a company and selling just pest, just fertilization weed control, just mowing, I believe is easier, and I believe it's faster. So I think either model works, but I absolutely think, while I like the one model concept, and that's the concept we're building, I think there is a massive amount of room, and it's proven this other model works. So why would all of this suddenly become possible? Because we already see companies using contractors. We already see companies running a FERT brand or a pest brand or a lawn brand separately. Those companies struggle, even under those models. Those companies tend to not get really big. Those companies tend to have a lot of behind-the-scenes management challenges that can bring down profits. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It absolutely does work. But if you look at the majority, that model sounds great, but it's hard to execute on, and it doesn't necessarily drive higher profit margins. The reason for this is it's hard to manage the marketing. It's hard to manage all the different phone numbers. It's hard to manage all the different lead sources. It's hard to manage all the different moving parts. It's hard to manage all these different brands and different software systems. It's hard to do all the billing. It's very complex. What I believe is going to change is how fast we can craft messaging. We're already seeing that. How fast we can spin up new marketing brands, how fast we can spin up websites, how fast we can spin up new SEO initiatives, how fast we can spin up new Google accounts, how fast we can spin up new phone numbers, how we will have automated systems to automatically respond to text messaging and email and phone. These are the changes I believe are coming. The other massive change that I know I'll touch on here again in a minute is I believe there's going to be a massive shift in how software is created and consumed. And that is also going to enable this model. In a completely different video, I'm going to lay out a bunch of predictions on where I think AI is going to take home services. So I'm going to skip over some of the reasons why I believe what I'm saying is possible. And I'm just going to get into the core of what I think the business looks like. So here's the gist of what I think the model looks like. I believe you can run this type of a company with 5 employees. I believe your field team will be largely contractors. A long ways out in the future, those contractors will slowly get replaced by robots. And again, I want to be clear, I envision a timeline that is longer than what an Elon Musk, or if you listen to the All In podcast, what they talk about. My personal theory is it's quite a ways out before robots of any form disrupt home services or disrupt the work that's happening inside your home. I think AI, automation technology, and what's coming is going to make all of this possible. It's going to make it possible to actually manage it. And when I think about what would those 5 employees look like, it's an owner, it's somebody who owns everything in the field, it's somebody who owns everything that happens in the office, it's someone that owns everything from a marketing standpoint, and it's someone that is a tech AI implementer. They own all tech and AI. Now, more people might be required for some of those functions. I see them in this model as a contractor. I see a model where you have a marketing person that works with lots of different contractors who are specialists in their thing. It's the model I think is very interesting even right now. And so I just see that model going much bigger. I see it as the future. If you had 6 brands, it might be that you have a marketing person that owns each brand. I'm not so sure that's necessary. What I think is more likely is you might have a field person, manager, that owns each brand. You might have a person in the office that owns each brand. I don't know. If I were to make a bet, where I think you would scale the employee is at the field level. So your field manager, who would own everything around contractors and the production of work, I could see that scale by brand. And if you were to need an additional person, I would imagine that person is an assistant to that individual. I know this is out there, and I know a lot of people that are stuck in the weeds doing the work would say this is impossible. I would disagree. Now, I don't know if this is the model, but this is my prediction. This is where I see it going based on what I believe is coming in the next 5 years from a technology standpoint. I also, as I said earlier, don't believe most people will run this model. I think some will, and those that do and execute it well will make a ton of profit, an unusually high amount of profit. The other thing I left out is when I say you're using contractors, I'm imagining you no longer have the trucks, you no longer have the equipment. You have literally contracted all of that out. Again, that model happens all over the United States right now today. This is not a new concept, but I believe what's coming is going to push more and more companies in that direction. I've long believed it for lawn mowing. I believe the future of lawn mowing is more a guy in a truck. It's more a guy with 2 trucks. I believe that's where I think the days of someone like a City Turf having 10,000 mowing clients, I just don't see that as the future. I see what I'm describing as more the future for a service like lawn mowing. So as you think about my idea, think of that ghost kitchen concept. There's a machine in the background. It's the back-end system. It's the operating system. You now have, in the future we're moving to, the technology that makes all of this possible. And what you do is you have multiple front-end brands. You have a pest brand, a lawn brand, a window cleaning brand, a power washing brand, maybe a second lawn mowing brand, maybe a second pest control brand, and they're hyper-focused in very specific areas to very specific kinds of clients. And the why behind this, why it will work, is back to what I always say. When you narrow the focus and you get hyper-focused on a very specific market, on a very specific type of client, solving exactly the problem and the pain that they have, and you know, as the language goes, your avatar very, very well, you can say exactly what you need to say, deliver exactly what you need to deliver to that individual where you are the very best buying solution for them. And when you get that hyper-focused, it makes your marketing and your service delivery so much better. And for many, it allows them to build a company much bigger. I think that's the future. And as I've said several times in this video, it's historically been impossible to construct that business model because the technology does not exist. Writing all the marketing, building all the communication, managing all the web forms, all the phone numbers. As I said, the different systems, the different accounting systems. It's too much. It's impossible. That's going to change. I'm still working on this idea. I've been thinking about it for about a year. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to guess at when the tech might start to appear. I've got a theory that the tech doesn't even have to appear, that maybe one day you'll build your own tech. That's an out there theory. But I think changes are coming and they're going to be dramatic. And this is a fuzzy idea, but it's my prediction that will get refined for what's coming next. I'd love to hear your comments. What do you think? Because I know there are a lot of things you can push back on regarding this idea.